Close your eyes for a second. Picture Argentina's national team. Messi, Di Maria, Julián Álvarez. Now answer one question. What's missing? Not the trophies, not the talent, the people. Once someone points it out, it's almost impossible to unsee. Argentina is one of football's greatest nations, a country of nearly 47 million people, on a continent famous for its diversity. Yet its World Cup winning squad looks completely different from almost every other major team in South America. So, why doesn't Argentina have black players? To answer that, we have to uncover one of the most forgotten chapters in South American history. And trust me, football is only where the mystery begins. Long before Lionel Messi ever wore Argentina's famous blue and white shirt, long before Argentina became a football powerhouse, this land looked very different. When the Spanish founded Buenos Aires in the late 1500s, the city became part of Spain's Atlantic Empire. Alongside European settlers came another group, enslaved Africans. For more than 3 centuries, ships crossed the Atlantic, carrying millions of Africans to the Americas. While Brazil received the largest number, thousands also arrived in the Rio de la Plata, the region that would later become Argentina. By the early 19th century, Afro Argentines weren't a tiny minority hidden in the background. They were craftsmen, merchants, musicians, soldiers, families. They built churches, businesses, and entire communities. Then historians uncovered a statistic that changes everything. Around 1 in every 3 people living in Buenos Aires was black. Now look at Argentina today. Where did they go? Most people think they already know the answer. They all died. Simple. Except, history is rarely that simple. Argentina didn't lose its black population overnight. It happened slowly. One war, one epidemic, one political decision at a time. The first major turning point came during Argentina's fight for independence in the early 1800s. Afro Argentines fought in large numbers against Spanish rule. Historian George Reed Andrews notes that black soldiers were heavily represented in the Patriot armies. Some historians argue they were disproportionately placed on the front lines, where casualties were devastating. You'd think that's the answer. It isn't. Because even after the wars, Afro Argentines were still there. Then came another disaster. In 1871, yellow fever swept through Buenos Aires, striking the city's poorest districts hardest, where many Afro Argentine families lived. Thousands died. Again, it still wasn't enough to explain the mystery, because cities recover, communities rebuild. So why didn't this one? The real turning point wasn't a disease, it was an idea. In 1853, Argentina adopted a new constitution. Buried inside it was Article 25, encouraging European immigration. This wasn't an accident, it was national policy. One of the Constitution's biggest influences was Juan Bautista Alberti, an Argentine lawyer and political thinker. He famously wrote, "Gobernar es poblar." To govern is to populate. At first, that sounds harmless, until you discover what he actually meant. Like many intellectuals of his era, Alberti believed European immigration would modernize Argentina and transform it into a nation that looked more like Europe than Latin America. The government listened. Between 1880 and the outbreak of the First World War, millions of immigrants arrived, mostly from Italy and Spain, but also Germany, France, and many other parts of Europe. Within just a few decades, Argentina experienced one of the largest immigration waves in modern history. Imagine standing in Buenos Aires in 1880. Now imagine standing there 30 years later. Different languages, different faces, different neighborhoods, an entirely different country. And that's when something remarkable happened. Afro Argentines didn't simply disappear. Many married into the growing European population. Children inherited new identities. Generation after generation, fewer people identified themselves as black. Modern historians argue that assimilation, combined with war, disease, and immigration, gradually made Afro Argentines statistically and culturally less visible. History wasn't erased, it faded, one family at a time, one generation at a time, one forgotten story at a time. Today, researchers are reopening that forgotten chapter. Old census records, church archives, military documents, family DNA tests. They're revealing something millions of people never knew. Argentina never had no black history. It had a black history that slowly disappeared from public memory. And suddenly, the football team starts making sense. Because football doesn't create society. It reflects it. The Argentina team that lifted the World Cup in Qatar wasn't built overnight. Every pass, every goal, every player wearing that famous blue and white shirt stands at the end of a historical chain stretching back to the Spanish Empire, the Atlantic slave trade, the wars of independence, the yellow fever epidemic, and one of the largest European immigration waves the world has ever seen. But here's the part most people never think about. If history had unfolded just a little differently, would Argentina's national team look completely different today? We'll never know. What we do know is that nations don't only change through wars or revolutions. Sometimes they change so gradually that nobody notices it's happening, until centuries later, someone asks one simple question. Why doesn't Argentina have black players? And suddenly, that question opens the door to 400 years of forgotten history. Modern historians argue that war, disease, European immigration, and generations of assimilation all combined to make Afro-Argentines statistically and culturally less visible. Not invisible. Less visible. That's an important difference, because Afro-Argentine communities still exist today. Artists, musicians, families, historians, organizations working to preserve a history that almost disappeared from public memory. In recent years, Argentina has even begun officially recognizing Afro-Argentine communities after generations of silence. The story isn't over. In many ways, it's only beginning to be told. So, why doesn't Argentina have black players? Maybe that's the wrong question. The better question is this. How did a country where nearly 1 in every 3 people in its capital was once black become a nation where many people don't even know that history existed? Because Argentina didn't just change its population. It changed the story it told about itself. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson of all. History doesn't always disappear. Sometimes, it quietly fades from memory, until one question forces the world to look again. And once you see it, it's almost impossible to unsee.